All right, guys, we are back and got a new set of guests here. Want to welcome Thorin and Robert Ohlens to the show. Well, if you guys need introductions, Thorin is a historian, journalist, content producer,
sometimes I'm mixed
analyst.
Yeah.
Wait, sometimes you're a what? What'd you say?
History, mate.
Sometimes I make history myself. You know?
Oh, man.
Like to play an active role in the community.
Absolutely. And then Robert Ohlens here. He's CEO of DreamHack. You guys know the boss DH in the house. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on the Last Unfiltered. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is that some new?
I'm Swedish, but I learn a lot of culture from Hollywood. So, isn't it This is kind of like an Irish wake.
It is.
So it is. we have red wine or we have Lagavulin. So.
Yeah, whiskey definitely, dude. Put your fucking red wine away.
Whiskey.
Yeah.
I know you love whiskey, man.
But I love red wine as well, man. So okay, I have some Lagavulin.
All right, good stuff. All right, so we're gonna talk. I got some topics I figured we'd start with, and then we'll just open it up to anything. I'm sure there'll be a lot of tangents that kind of pop up. Well, so I'm gonna start off by talking about like last time you were on, Duncan, or maybe one of the previous times you were on. We were talking about just the state of esports.
Right, is it hard to confuse those episodes?
We're not gonna talk about that one.
Was it the time when we had that really good chat about StarCraft?
We need to speak about the Holocaust.
Oh God.
Are we talking about the Holocaust that the Germans did, or the one going on right now in Palestine? And
wasn't the Holocaust an inside job? Or am I getting my rhetoric mixed up there?
Oh wow.
Different kind of meeting.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
All right, let's keep this esports at least to begin with, and then we'll just let it go. But at one point when you're on the show, we talked about just esport, just the games, just the esports in each of the different games, and you were kind of evaluating who was kind of in the healthiest position. And at the time, I think you were talking about Dota 2 being there, just because Valve was not as involved with it, and it was kind of organically growing and that sort of it. So I kind of want to see what your thoughts are right now, just looking at all the big esports and which one's in the best spot.
Okay, here's the thing. You have to ask, like, best for what? If you mean best for the industry, then it's actually hard to tell. Maybe League of Legends is, because it's got so much money, so many viewers. That's all really good if you like that sort of stuff. I don't really care about that stuff myself. I'm more of a purist. I just want to see like the best games and the best teams keep meeting. So in that sense, I actually have a really weird one. I actually think CSGO has the best tournament circuit right now. And the reason why is Dota 2 has the best tournament circuit in terms of like number of amazing tournaments with tons of money, and people can donate all this money. And in theory, if you're a Dota 2 player, you can earn fuck tons of money, but play in your region and externally and have all these great matchups. But I've noticed there's a problem Dota 2 has now, which is it's got too much money. And because it's got too much money, if you're really awesome and you're Asian and you win the international, you just fucking retire afterwards. Whereas like if someone wins the world championship, you want to see them come and defend it and play the next guy who rises up. So the good thing about CSGO, this is why we've got the best circuit. We have a circuit kind of like Dota 2, like a really open circuit where you can attend any tournaments you want. And all the best teams get to play in theory regularly every couple of months. You see those matchups. But crucially, we don't have enough money that you can retire. We're going to make you stay in this game for as long as you can. You're going to have to grind it out. And so that's the good thing. We retain the stars, I think.
Esports is such a young thing. So, too much money makes people lose passion, because I don't need to do anything more. I got $500,000 here, and I can do whatever I want. I think it's, even though it's good for the hype, but it's bad for the scene. It's like, imagine if, like at the turn of the last century, if tennis or American football had in the scale of things, the same amount of prize money as we have now after 15 years. It's insane.
Think of it this way, ChanManV. Mm-hmm. So in StarCraft 2, because I know most people here are like a StarCraft 2 background, you might, if I asked everyone here, like, who is the greatest StarCraft 2 player ever, I'm sure one name that would immediately be put forwards is Tasia, because he's won so many tournaments, right? But actually, there will always be a dispute against Tasia because he never won GSL. And now he doesn't even compete in GSL. So he can never win GSL. Now, here's the stupid thing, okay? In StarCraft 2, it doesn't matter how awesome GSL is. Tasia will never compete because there's too much money in playing tournaments where the competition is less than GSL, and to compete in GSL directly takes away your chance to compete in some of those tournaments. So as a result, in StarCraft 2, you can never have my ideal world where you always know who the best players are because they're always playing each other. Even if Hero goes from GSL and he plays Tasia in a foreign tournament, that's not the same because the format is different. Like the whole point of GSL is, a week when in advance, like I'm prepping for this one guy. That's what makes it so hard to win. Whereas in stuff like CSGO, we always know who the best team is because they have to literally play each other like in a month from now. And if you win that time, you have to then prove it in a LAN 2 weeks later. You can't just be the best for like some spurious reason. Ultimately you have to actually win in the game. Whereas I think in some of the different esports, League of Legends is the worst example because they're so regional.
Huge example.
Like I'll give you a great example. Okay, I'll give you a quick example.
You see that what you're talking about exactly. You see you see so many fucking people playing the guessing games where it's like, oh well, I think that these guys, like this NA team is probably better than that EU team because they played them one time, and then you get like into that huge fucking discussion of who's better than who by trying to do the cross-reference bullshit.
So is that
think of this example, okay? So the most famous NA player in history of League of Legends is Doublelift, who's the AD carry, and he's clearly a very skilled player. The most famous AD carry of all time in terms of what the people think was the greatest was a guy called Wei Zhao who played for World Elite in China. These two players have never played in an official competition match. That's because Doublelift never gets to the international tournaments, and now Wei Zhao doesn't either. But as a result, there was only something like 2 tournaments they could have ever actually met at, and they just didn't happen to meet. So imagine if the 2 best players of like their generation in a position never ever played each other. That's fucking terrible.
But that's a team. That's a team sport thing versus an individual.
What team sport can you think of where the 2 best players never ever played each other? So Peyton Manning's never played Tom Brady ever in his whole career, and let's just argue who's better.
Hey, you're talking about
terrible.
individuals and team sports at the same time? It's like that's a really bad analogy.
I think it's fine because you're talking about tournament structure here. You're talking about like how tourneys are played over the course of time in terms of like, is there a lot of money in an Eastern region? Is it region locked versus...
Duncan, a question. Since you're the wise man in the bunch and the guy with the best English accent as well, or Scottish, I'm sorry.
Get fucked, Jubaland.
Jubaland.
Would you prefer an ATP PGA system for 1v1 games and some for like FIFA version for team games? Or
my favorite system in the whole world is tennis. I actually like tennis as a sport. But here's the thing, I watch tennis the same way I watch every sport and esport. I don't actually, there's almost no esport that exists now where if you had 2 random people play, I would watch and I could just enjoy the game on its own level. It has to be like the context of like an amazing player who can go beyond just the game, he can like transcend it. And it has to be like the history of like, okay, this guy always wins the tournament, but this guy's like the talented guy who we all know maybe he could get it together one day and they're going to battle and see. That's all we get to see, where both players are at. So in that sense, that's why I love tennis. Because since they have strict seeding and a world ranking system that's like permanently updated, it means that if you're the number 1 and number 2 player, you can never meat except in the final. And so it means
that is actually my biggest beef with Blizzard, because they dropped the ball so heavily, because they could have made an ATP system for StarCraft 2.
I mean, a seeding system can be made. I mean, you can make a seeding system external to like WCS, right? I mean,
that's what annoys me. Okay,
like anybody could make a seeding system.
That's what we do at DreamHack. We do our own thing, but the universe is not Sweden, sadly.
Here's the thing, okay? I've made this point a million times in esports. There is actually no good argument against the seeding system, which sounds controversial, right? Because you could say stuff like, what if this guy can't go to that many tournaments? What these other things? These things all exist in current seeding systems. In the ATP rankings, if you don't go to certain tournaments, you don't get the points. If you go to all of them and you do badly, you have a better chance to get points than guys who go to one tournament and win it, okay? That's true. But as a result, because people know that's the system, then if you care about the ranking, you do go to specific tournaments. And in fact, you even think to yourself, right, if I'm the number 1 rank, if I did badly at this major, then I have to go to like 3 tournaments here and get a certain amount of points to retain my spot. Like actually, the reason why you could definitely have a system is because the excuse always given was that, okay, well, if let's use an old school example. If the CPL does seeding, then what they would do is they didn't used to count your result in like ESWC. They would pretend like if you'd won that, you wouldn't get the number 1 seed because they don't want to give their props to them.
Right.
It's not up to the organizer to do the seeding. You can have anyone do the seeding. All you need is someone to try and sit down and really think of reasons as to why this team's above this one, what the criteria is. Because as soon as you have criteria, then it doesn't even matter if we disagree, because then we can at least disagree on the criteria and maybe refine that.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
think of it this way.
If everybody's wrong from the same standpoint, it's actually correct.
Well,
Like, I put
it's
it like
easier to
this.
fix
Here's
the problem too.
Here's the analogy, okay? If you don't do seeding, you essentially are doing seeding. You're doing random seeding, which is the worst kind of seeding. If I had all the players in the world ranked 1 to 50, and I said, like, right, let's sit around, like, ranking them 1 to 50. If it was you or me, okay, maybe I would have, like, Tasia 4, and maybe you think he's, like, number 2, and maybe someone else thinks he's number 5. The difference is we would never have Tasia number 50. But in random seeding, that's like getting that bucket of names, they're throwing on the floor, and now Tasia can be 50. And now Stardust can be number 1. Even if we disagreed on some aspect of the ranking, it would be impossible for it to be that wrong, you know. So actually, random seeding, what we have now, is literally, by definition, the worst seeding possible. It is possible by fluke to have good seeding come out of it when you just get a random permutation, but it's literally the worst process possible. So if you want a really good esport where the top teams make the right position in each tournament, you actually have to seed it in some way.
That's why you have to go, you know, hardcore socialist on game developers, and take away the game from them, and let us.
Yeah, I hate
know,
shit where game developers are involved in it. They just fuck it up every time.
The
Well,
people's advocates should be the guys who are in charge.
Here's the analogy, ChanManV, for people who are game developers. You know, in NBA and NHL and American sports, there's a history of really famous owners who are super rich, who have a team, and they repeatedly fuck their own franchise for like 20 years by making really stupid decisions about what player should be on or which player they should give a big contract to who isn't actually worthy. And what happens is, there's almost no example in history I can think of where one of those owners who exerted a lot of control had the best team and won the championship. Like, nearly always we give that example as the guy who should just step out of it. Like, he's only there to write the check, okay? He signs his name on the check, but his job is he's meant to hire the general manager, and the general manager is an expert in which players are good. And he tells this guy, like, I know you really want that player, but actually, like, the value I'd have to give for that player, it's too much, okay? We can't afford that. Like, we need to get this player here who's not as good, but he's a better trade for us, okay? And that way, by doing these correct decisions, we'll have the best chance of winning. That's what esports needs. We don't need some guy from, like, League and Riot or Blizzard who doesn't know that much to just make weird guesses when experts know those.
Well, but to be fair, you can't. I don't think you could leave that on organizers. I wouldn't trust organizers to do it, because organizers, you could wind up in a situation where
yeah, you need like an independent person.
Yeah, there needs an independent.
Yeah, somebody who doesn't have a stake in anything. Because one of the problems we have right now. That's a good question.
Steven, you want something like FIFA or IOC or some other shitty?
I don't know shit about. I don't know shit about.
That is so corrupt. So it's, you know,
it is corrupt, Robert. It is corrupt, but ideally that's what we need, right?
Right now, one of the big problems we have in StarCraft 2 is how the invite system works. This is something we talked about last time. How every single fucking point event has, you know, like, look at how Homestory Cup, all of these points that all of these players can grab because they're always invited. You know, certain players get invited to go to so many tournaments. If we leave it up to the organizers to try to figure out a system, they're probably going to figure out a system that, you know, favors them being able to invite the most popular players more often than not, right? Like, because organizers are
yes and no. It is like in tennis, or more so like in golf, where you have a cut. You have, you know, the first 2 days, people have to, you know, make it to the cut, and some of the players are already, you know, qualified, so they don't have to play the cut. See what I mean?
What? You mean during the playoffs?
Really,
you mean during the playoffs,
really,
or are you talking about just like a general event? Like,
not playoffs, but, you know, qualifiers. You know, who's going to be on a particular tournament.
If you have the number one player in the world, Steven, or Chris, you don't waste time having him play the most low-level qualifier. In fact, it helps you, because then there's no fluke chance that he just gets knocked out by someone who then won't be good when they get in the main tournament. Meanwhile, the guy who we all really want to see then can't play. That's actually the way all sports work. It's not a WWE thing, because you're not going as far as just putting him in the final and like letting him win, but you just put him in the main tournament so he doesn't waste his time, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, what you love is tennis, which is like the entire thing is the main tournament. right? Like at a
No, they have wild cards for certain spots, and they have qualifiers.
Oh, okay,
and
that's
in
true.
Theory,
Yes, that's
if
true.
you really were the best player ever, but you're not known now, you could qualify through to it. It's just that they don't make Roger Federer go to the local shit that qualifies to the regional thing.
Yeah, like the
They
U.S.
don't
Open.
make him
Like,
do that.
I see what you mean. Okay, got it.
One thing you also have to keep in mind too is that seeding systems can get really broken. Like we had to deal with that with MLG a lot. If anybody remembers the early years of MLG for StarCraft 2, the seeding system was horrendously broken.
The
And
worst.
in a game like StarCraft versus, I don't know shit about tennis, but I'm guessing if you're a professional tennis player, how long can you be like at your peak? Is it like 5 years? Is it less than that? Is it more than
if you're
that?
Federer, you're like
about
8
10
years.
In esports, it's literally sometimes like 6 months. Like you'll hear of a player who's like on a fucking fire streak for like 6 months, and then they're gone.
Okay.
But like sometimes the lingering effects of the seeding system can kind of fuck over how. Of course, you could argue that you can modify the seeding system and not be so fucking stupid. But
So, Steven,
That plays
give me an
into-
example of how that seeding system is better than no seeding.
Oh no, I'm not.
Actually, it
I'm not
plays
saying-
into it.
I agree with you that the no seeding system is fucked completely.
It's the worst, right?
Well, I think
Yeah,
the node seeding.
Even the
probably.
MLG one, you're giving an example
no,
now.
no. Actually, I don't know.
bored.
Actually, I would
Can't we
almost
talk
take the
shit
no
about
seeding
people
system.
instead?
I would almost take. I would
First,
almost take
second
the no
half,
seeding
man.
system.
Second half.
I would almost take the no seeding system over. In fact, I think I would over the early days of MLG, where a player who's legitimately bottom rung is continually seeded into these like really far. I hate to use iNControL as an example, but it happened with iNControL in StarCraft 2 where he fell off super hard. But like, and there were like the most ridiculous things where you would take these two Koreans and these two Europeans, and this guy would win like literally like 11 series against amazing players, and then you would have iNControL who would win one game, not even a series, but one game, and then lose
But
5
you're
series,
talking
and he would play.
ancient history here, Steven.
No. I'm talking history,
Ancient
but no.
history.
But it has an application what we're talking about. We're talking about how seeding systems in something like esports where it's so volatile, where a player who's really good could fall off in
Well,
literally 3
no,
months.
it's
Well,
different.
here's the thing. Here's the thing.
We
I think
don't do that.
I think
You
that
know, we thrive on if we have like a no-name guy coming in, you know, from you know, the bottom of the qualifier and fighting his way up to the finals. That is a win-win for everybody.
That's
viewers,
not necessarily true. That's
for
not true at all.
us and for the audience
it is
No
entertaining.
way.
for
and
sure.
the guy
I mean,
himself.
When you have
That is-
no
that-
name,
that is-
people need
that is-
people need
that is the
somebody.
Best storyline ever. Somebody who no one ever heard about. You know,
I absolutely
battled his
disagree.
way up.
Think that I
through-
never heard anything more wrong in my life. There's no possible way that's true. Nobody believes that.
You want to hear something wrong?
Everybody
Hitler didn't lose. He won.
what, Steven? Like, you don't think people like the underdog story? Well, come, I mean,
but they
that's
have to know the underdog. When you've got 2 no names, or there's even people who are upset if you've got like a fuck ton of fans of a certain player and a no name comes through and stumps them. At least in the StarCraft community, that's
I'm
a
talking
huge
about-
upset to the majority of people. People are like, fuck
I'm
that. I don't know
talking
who the fuck this guy is.
I'm talking about how we try to structure a DreamHack Open when it comes to StarCraft 2. It is an open tournament. It is basically Wimbledon every time we do it.
that means nothing to
And we have a seeding system, but it's not as a real seeding system because of Blizzard, because they want to have control over the points and whatnot. So we can't call it points because that's WCS. But it's seeding to the grand finals each year.
Here's the thing,
Sure,
right? Let's
okay.
say Thorin tomorrow gets to decide the seeding in StarCraft 2. I do my world ranking, and for some
I would
reason,
love
everyone
to
has
have
to
that.
take it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Everyone has to take it as the official
Would be
ranking.
awesome.
Okay, so I do my ranking. Here's the key thing. Even if you disagree with me, you can ask me, okay, but why is Tasia ranked number 4? And I'll tell you, like, because of this reason, like, I think that tournament was worth this many points. The difference is, in normal systems, either there's no one to even ask because it's done randomly, in which case you just essentially, whatever, let's let just random chance decide how it goes. Or even worse, in these companies like Riot and like Blizzard, there's no transparency. There's no guy we can go to and say, who made that decision? They're just like, well, as a company, we made this. It's like, no, one person eventually makes the decision on something or prompts the decision. So who is it who does it? We're not allowed to know those things. That's why I don't like those people being in control. Because when any power that can't be questioned is like obviously not a good thing for little people, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Well,
I
you know,
don't
it's-
think anybody disagrees that some kind of
calling
seeding
me a
system would be
dwarf?
superior.
Oh,
Some
and by
kind
the
of
way-
superior system would be really good.
To link back to my original point, the reason why Dota 2 in after CS:GO, I had my own greedy reason for liking CS:GO, but which is that the players can't retire because they get too much money, so they're forced to stay and play for my to dance for my amusement, essentially. But Dota 2, in theory, has the best open circuit. And what's beautiful about the Dota 2 circuit is that it's proven how completely worthless Riot's hostage that it has over the esports community is. Because the whole reason they could always fuck you is they could say, listen, I'm providing the money. I'm the one who puts the millions up. And it's like, well, no, actually now the fans put up much more money than you're putting up. And we have an open circuit, which is what we wanted all along. Where's your excuse now?
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing if the rich kid's dad after the hockey game takes you all out for pizza, yeah, you have to like be nice and not talk shit about his kid. But if you were about to go out yourself for a slap-up 3-course meal and he's like, no, I'm taking everyone for pizza. And by the way, I'm going to talk about how your dad's a piece of shit. Like, you'd be like, no, cheers, mate. I think I'll just go here. See ya, bye. Like,
okay, yeah, fair enough. That's true. Now, what's interesting with the whole seating discussion that you had was that I never really thought about the fact that
there is no seating.
Well, that's what I mean. I never really thought about it, that being the issue of why potentially we don't see the same names like in storylines like consistently, you know, whenever they have a win, usually it just drops off. It's kind of like we were talking about, Steven.
Chris,
I think it has something to do with the seating in the tournament.
Esports, you know what esports is basically? It's a
Boy, here we go.
Ocean world with small islands where everybody has their own rules.
Yeah.
But nobody ever connects.
No, but what I'm saying is,
So
if everybody were using the same seating system, I think we would see the same names each week a little bit more, and then we could build more storylines.
ChanManV, if I was just installed as a benevolent philosopher god king of esports, then I think we would actually have an ideal world. Yeah, you're right. I agree, ChanManV.
Even if we didn't do a seating system, at the very least, it would be nice to see a discussion about how that should work, rather than just Blizzard does everything on their own, and it's like, oh, okay.
So, Richard, you brought it up, you know, when we were talking about playing the show. What happened to the summit, Robert? Like, what the hell? Like, what happened to all the organizers getting together and, like, figuring shit out, like scheduling and seating and shit like that?
That was just PR bullshit, man.
That was just PR bullshit. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because it kind of felt like it was PR bullshit. Like, and you know I love you to bits, but like I didn't see anything come out of that ESL